get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Backfire this week. Well, we sure have a lot to talk about. I guess we need to talk about Franklin's trip first, though. Franklin, John had an interesting time while you was gone here with John Wolf. So
well, it's always interesting to visit with John. Both Johns, actually.
Tell us how your trip went in France.
Well, it was great. I enjoyed it. My daughter had a good time. It was actually a great experience to be there during the D-Day celebration. I met several very elderly U.S. service personnel who had gone back to visit the celebration. It was a real privilege and an honor to meet them. Pleased to report that contrary to what we read in the media sometimes, we're actually fairly popular there. There was not a hint of anti-American comment in the media there, nothing in the newspapers. That was pretty gratifying, actually.
Boring, wasn't it?
It wasn't boring, but it was good to hear. We sometimes get the other impression.
France don't have a whole lot to say bad about America because America's got a few things to say bad about them.
Well, they'd be speaking German if not for us. So.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time. That's not your first time there, right?
No, I'd been once before. It was the first time I took my daughter, and so that was a special time for us.
Well, good. I'm glad you had a good time. Well, we've had a good time, too. There has been a whole lot going on while you've been gone. And actually, you really missed a lot from President Obama. I mean, I don't know how I can recap everything that's happened since you've been gone.
I was keeping up with the papers while I was over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're on top of things.
Do they get news in France?
They sure do.
Do they get Fox News in France?
You know, I didn't see Fox News. I didn't see MSNBC either. CNN does have an international version that's available over there.
Well, I don't know where to start this morning. John, you got any ideas where we ought to start? Should we start with Obama or something else this morning?
I don't know. You can start with whatever you want to. You can start with some local stuff if you want.
Well, I don't know if I have. What do you got local?
Well, it's in the paper this morning that the judge dismissed the charges in the Valentine's murder case.
That's that case been going on since 1999 or something?
Right.
The Valentine murders.
Now, those are the charges that Richard Fisher had put back
had brought a second time, and he dismissed them on double jeopardy grounds.
He based a whole career on that case, hadn't he?
Well, I don't know if I go that far. His career
had
been around a long time before that case came along.
I thought he'd worked his whole life on that case just about.
But that case has gone on for a long time.
Of course, the school board lost a big case this past week
yes,
as
they
well.
did.
What was that?
The Susan Elliott case, where she had been dismissed by the school board after having been charged with a crime that was later dismissed.
Not only was it dismissed, but the person who charged her with it pled guilty to filing a false report and was took time for it.
Oh my goodness! I heard this.
She had been fired by the school system. Had an administrative hearing.
What was she fired for?
Well, that's a part of the story back and forth. The boyfriend accused her of assault, and they fired her over that accusation. That accusation was later not only recanted and all charges were dropped, but the boyfriend pled guilty to filing a false report and accepted a sentence for it. The board then decided that wasn't why she was fired. She was fired for all these other reasons, that she wasn't a competent teacher, although none of that is reflected in any of her reviews over the years. All of the reviews were exemplary. For example, I was told that one of the accusations was that she didn't teach social studies. Her kids actually had the highest scores in social studies in the school. So they've got some, Ricky Ricardo would say, some splaining to do.
So this is the county school.
It was, yeah.
Apparently the board hearings were pretty rough. Some personal things were said about her.
Well, I mean, are they obligated to put her?
The judge says they're obligated to put her right.
She went through an administrative hearing and lost, And then the next step in that is to take the case to Chancery Court. Our local judges recused themselves, and so a chancellor from Hamilton County was assigned to the case. He heard it and ruled overwhelmingly in her favor and ordered that she be reinstated with back pay.
And I haven't seen the ruling, but apparently it's a 45-page ruling, but apparently he had some things to say about the way she was treated through the whole process.
He definitely made some comments, yeah.
So, anyway,
but now the school board's doubled down. Said, "Oh, we'd do it again. Don't really want her back." I mean, you would expect some graciousness.
So they're fixing to get ready to.
Now, when I say the board, I shouldn't say the board. This was a split vote.
So the school board, they're fighting hiring her back. So
No,
I think they'll be hiring her back now. I mean, they could appeal this further, but
I've heard that the majority, and that's probably the same majority plus one that didn't want to let her go in the first place, probably will not appeal this.
Well, keep us informed.
well, that's all from the papers.
Well, that's the kind of local stuff that shouldn't happen. I mean, that's when you get people who aren't focused on their job, which is to make sure the kids get the best education they can get, and you get people that are focused on, look how powerful I am.
I know. Let's talk about Mr. Obama again. We just have to talk about him. He's deploying 275 people over to Iraq to help save our remaining staff that we have over there. What do you think, John?
Well, there's a ton of people that saw this coming. This is what you get when you fail to lead and you create a vacuum in the world, which his foreign policy, now Franklin's going to say I'm a partisan. This is the New York Times at this point, the Washington Post at this point, saying that his foreign policy is in ruins. It's a shattered policy, and this is what you get from weakness.
Well, what we have is the culmination of a 2,000-year-old dispute that's never stopped brewing.
Well, it stopped brewing when he took office. Bush had it pretty well calm and stable. And
that's
this guy
not true. That's
put
when
a
the
policy
surge
in
was
place.
going on.
Hold on a minute. Let me play something.
I am very optimistic about Iraq. I think it's going to be one of the great achievements of this administration.
Got nothing.
Hold on a minute. We're hearing nothing here.
I am very optimistic about Iraq. I think it's going to be one of the great achievements of this administration.
We got. Here it is.
I am very optimistic about Iraq. I think it's going to be one of the great achievements of this administration.
That's our vice president speaking. Let's hear our president speak.
4 years ago, I promised to end the war in Iraq. We did. I promised to refocus on the terrorists who actually attacked us on 9/11, and we have. We've blunted the Taliban's momentum in Afghanistan, and in 2014, our longest war will be over. A new tower rises above the New York skyline. Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat, and Osama bin Laden is dead.
Well, there it is. Osama bin Laden is dead. That's the only thing we can really say out of that, isn't it?
No, we can say that there are democratic elections taking place in Afghanistan that's been
Where
ongoing.
the Taliban is now cutting the people's fingers off.
And heads.
Well, in spite of the Taliban's efforts, who, by the way, were there before this election started, if you'll remember, who the Soviet Union couldn't defeat either.
Franklin, you're missing the point.
No, we're not missing the point.
You're missing the point on all of this.
No.
This guy has made things worse.
The point.
When will you admit that he is an absolute disaster on the world stage?
What I will tell you, John, is that this is the culmination of a series of huge mistakes over 40 years.
Franklin, look,
And
when
at some
does this
point-
guy take responsibility for his screw-ups? He is a screw-up, and you people are so enamored with him, you can't
I'm not
admit that
enamored
he's
with anyone.
destroying the world at our feet.
What he's destroying, John, are the illusions that you people wallow in
Let me
day
read you
after
something,
day
Franklin,
after day.
just so you can understand this. There's a tape of Mitt Romney saying exactly what will happen if we pull out, as this guy has said we would pull out. Now, I'm going to read you one a little earlier than that. This is President Bush, July 12, 2007, in a press conference. I know some in Washington would like us to start leaving Iraq now. Now, that's Barack Obama, because it's the middle of his campaign talking about pulling out of Iraq. To begin, withdrawing before our commanders tell us we are ready would be dangerous for Iraq, for the region, and for the United States. It would mean surrendering the future of Iraq to al-Qaeda. It would mean that we'd be risking mass killings on a horrific scale. It would mean that we allow the terrorists to establish a safe haven in Iraq to replace the one they lost in Afghanistan. It would mean increasing the probability that American troops would have to return at some later date to confront an enemy that is even more dangerous. Tell me one thing in 2007 that President Bush got wrong in that statement.
Well, what he's got wrong is the suggestion that you can have an end to this sectarian conflict in Iraq.
He didn't say any of that, Franklin.
That's what
He
we're
told
talking
you
about here,
exactly
Don.
what would happen if we pulled out. Obama pulled out everything in this statement from
Why did we pull out,
2007.
John? Why did we pull out?
Because this guy doesn't want America to be a leader. He
Why
thinks
did we pull
America
out,
is the
John?
problem.
We pulled out because the Iraqi government elected would not agree that our forces could stay.
An idiot like Joe Biden was put in charge of negotiating the
Joe
status
Biden
of forces
is looking
treaty.
like a genius these days because he was the one who advocated.
He also advocated against the surge, which was the only reason
Joe
we had a
Biden is
peaceful
the
Iraq.
one who
I am very
advocated
optimistic about
that Iraq be partitioned into
about
three
Iraq. I think it's going to be
sectarian
one of
states.
the great achievements of this administration.
Play that again. I want to hear that again one more time. We're not getting our audio.
I am very optimistic about Iraq. I think it's going to be one of the great achievements of this administration.
Do you think this is a great achievement of this administration?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
Well, the vice president that you just bragged on said that. He's the smartest man in D.C. outside of Obama.
I'm just saying what he advocated early on appears to be what's happened.
I'm going to ask you a real easy question. Is Obama a good president or a bad president?
Oh, I think he's doing just fine.
Oh my gosh!
No,
You talk about
here's the difference. No, this is the
making you
difference.
concerned for the future.
This is the silly nonsense that goes on, where you're constantly on what you think the issue is, and the issue is far longer term than what's bothering you at the moment. This
mean
is
the
a
fact that the
2,000-year
Mideast is
dispute.
about to explode like a powder keg? That's a minor little thing I shouldn't be focused on, Franklin?
No, what I think is that for once we have a president who's focusing on the long term instead of the short term.
The long term, he's been in there 5 years, and this is his result. It's
The
collapsing
long
at our
term
feet.
is 20 years, 30 years, 40 years,
Well,
John. If we had done that, we would never be in the mess
Well,
to begin
first
with.
off, Franklin,
But we didn't
security
do that.
experts have told him for months now about ISIS, and the man has the gall to come on the TV and go, I just found out about this on the
This
TV
is
news.
a
Everything
sectarian-
surprises him, doesn't
It
it?
is not
No,
a
it's not. It
sectarian.
is
This is
a sectarian.
Al-Qaeda. This is worse than Al-Qaeda.
Right now, there are thousands and thousands of Iraqis that are showing up at recruiting stations to fight these ISIS folks. But they're not showing up because they want to defeat terrorists. They're showing up because they think they're defending their faith.
Actually, there's Sunnis showing up to kill the Shiites. What you've
No,
done is
you
this
got it
guy,
backwards,
this guy,
John.
This guy, Franklin.
So this is a perfect
igniting
example.
A sectarian
See, John
war.
completely misunderstands what's happening in Iraq. The ISIS folks are, in fact, the
The
Sunnis.
Sunnis. You know what, Franklin? You're right. I misspoke. My point
No.
is, it's
Here,
a
let's have a history
war.
lesson. Let's have a history
We
lesson.
don't need a.
Oh,
we've
we
had
need a
5
big
years of
history
this guy's
lesson because
history, and it's a
if you
disaster.
can't
Franklin,
understand
is
the
world
history,
in a better
you
place
can't come
now?
up with it.
Obama's been in charge for 5 years. Has he made it better or worse?
Well, in many ways, he's made it
All right,
better.
so we'll tell that to the
Well,
Ukrainians who have no gas now.
No, wait a minute. Let's talk about
No,
something.
let's back up here and talk about the history and how we got
If
into
you
this.
can't
I
admit that
wanna
this
get
guy's a
into-
disaster, you're the problem, Franklin. And people like you electing people like this are the problem.
People
What
like
about-
me is
Yes, people that
53%
can't
of the
look at
American
5
people.
years of results and say he's a disaster.
What about the kids coming over from right now at the borders? What about all the children?
We're
in
hiring
South
lawyers
America?
for him and putting them on planes and flying them
is,
inland.
Is that good, Franklin? I mean, how come he hasn't said a word? He hasn't done one thing about this problem.
I'm sorry.
All the kids that
Yes,
are coming
yes.
It's all over the news right now. Everywhere.
Should we be buying them airplane tickets
I mean,
and
what-
flying them
why-
inland
why-
flying them back to
why-
Honduras where they came from?
Why are we?
Well, there are laws, John.
They're breaking them. They're coming into
No,
the country
there are
illegally.
laws that govern how we have to
Actually,
handle
we're
them.
not acting under laws. We're acting under an executive order that was actually in replace of a law.
Wait a minute. Well, then, what about our guy that made the wrong turn on the Mexican line and happened to go across the line? How come nothing's been said about that?
Or a guy who I don't know what you're
The
talking about.
Marine who's sitting in a Mexican jail being tortured because he made a wrong turn at the border, and our wonderful vice president and our excellent secretary of state can't manage to even bring his name up to the Mexican officials.
No, I don't know anything about
Okay,
this.
that happened.
First
while
I've
you-
heard
He's
about
been in Mexican prisons for 3 months because he took a wrong turn at the border, had 3 guns in his car, called 911 and said, "Hey, I've made a wrong turn. What do I do?" They arrest him. They're torturing him, and our president has
Torturing
never
him.
even talked about. Yes, they're torturing
Well,
him. Franklin.
he's in their jail. I mean, we're sitting here letting them come across the border in Mexico. We're not even saying stop. We're just saying come on. And then we've got one of our guys that made a wrong turn that's in prison there. Now, do you think we could say stop now, then let our guy go, and we'll at least put our stop sign back down?
I don't know what you mean by the stop sign back down.
Okay.
We're not
coming
inviting all these children
they're
into
coming
this. They're
across
coming.
in
No,
actually,
we're
Obama
inviting them.
did invite them during the last election to get Hispanic votes. He said, "Hey, if you were
How
born,
does that
bef-
get-
if
how
you're
does that
under
get you
six-
Hispanic
because
votes?
he said if you're under 16, we're not going to prosecute you," which was actually him violating federal law. And what he didn't think about or didn't care about was that word trickled out into Central and South America, and now in droves they're coming up here because of what our president spouted off to buy some Hispanic votes.
The newspapers are encouraging them to come over, saying now's a great time to come.
By the way, Franklin, the government in Iraq for months has been asking the administration to use drones to strike ISIS. For months before this big push happened, the White House...
The government in Iraq
has
has shown itself to be extraordinarily
Let me
corrupt.
say this again. They have asked for drone strikes on ISIS. Corrupt or not, they ask for drone
This
strikes
is the
on
point,
ISIS.
John, and this is how we got into this situation.
We
the
got
kind
into
of
this in
thinking you're talking
2008
about.
by electing
No,
a guy who
no,
was a community
no,
organizer
let's
and had no
revisit it,
experience
John.
on the world stage.
We got Saddam Hussein because we backed him into power. What did we do? He represented a minority in the country.
I'm not talking
and we
about
helped
20
him.
years ago.
I'm
I'm not talking about 8 years ago.
because you
I'm
don't
talking
talk about
5
it that you
years
don't
ago.
understand
Franklin,
the lessons of
Here's
history.
what I understand. Whatever you want to say about history, I'm not going to argue that with you. You didn't want to
I
go.
know, because you don't
listen
care.
to me. You didn't want to go in. A lot of people didn't want to go in.
That's not true,
the point
John.
Is,
I supported the president's decision to go in,
Franklin,
and that's one reason I'm so furious, because they lied
well,
to me.
Franklin, the president, whatever the situation, when Bush left office, Iraq was stable. 5 years into this guy's policies,
not stable, John.
it is unbelievably stable compared to what it is right now. This guy has made it worse. If you can't see that, you're the problem.
Things do seem to be worse, frankly.
Things that we do have consequences decades
Bingo,
down the road.
bingo. Elect a guy who doesn't know what he's doing, and
Decades
you
down
get
the
the
road.
consequences.
And the problem is, your party has screwed it up
Your
for
party's
20
been in
years,
control
and
for
now you're
20
upset
years.
that
Once again,
somebody else
20 years,
is
folks.
dealing with your
Once
mess.
again, Obama's not to blame.
I didn't say he's not to blame for anything.
Politico
I'm just
this
telling
past
you,
week said Obama's still suffering from a Bush hangover. When do you people expect this guy to accomplish something?
Anything.
we assisted the creation of Saddam Hussein,
Franklin,
who inflamed all
let's
these
talk about this from
sectarian
2008
for 20
forward.
years.
Talk about this from 2008 forward.
No,
Your
we're
guy-
not going to talk about it
Your-
because that's all you focus on. You think that the world started the day that Barack Obama got elected. And it's not true, John.
Well, I hate to break this to you, but I believe the political lines over there were drawn, Franklin.
2,000 years ago.
Actually, in 1917, these current lines. So, you know what? I guess you're right. It's not Obama's fault. Who was president in 1917? It must be his fault. Your guy's a failure, and the fact that you
He is.
can't look at this and say he's a failure is the problem.
What about playing golf while they're cutting people's heads off? Is that okay?
Let me think about that for a few days while I go to a DNC fundraiser.
When is it?
DNC fundraiser, Franklin.
When is it that there's nothing bad going on in the world?
DNC fundraiser, Franklin.
More silly nonsense.
I think $35,000 a plate fundraiser while Iraq is imploding. It's our signature achievement.
Well, I'm sure, John, that things are going to really change now since they've got a new Benghazi breakthrough. The United States called a key leader over there. They're bringing him back to America to show him some American justice.
Yeah. So
why didn't we get him 2 years ago when he was interviewing with the New York Times?
He was not being interviewed.
He was.
No, he was not.
I can show you the video.
Go right
of it.
ahead and show me the video of that guy being interviewed.
Fine.
John, you can't do it
Next
because
week-
it didn't
no,
happen.
Next week. Franklin, I hate to
No,
break this
you
to you. The
came
New York
in here
Times
day
says
after
it
day
happened.
and made that claim, and you're absolutely convinced today that this is the same person.
Wait a minute. I've got the Chattanooga Times here now. You have a lot of faith in Chattanooga Times, don't you?
Well, that article isn't from the Chattanooga Times. That's from the AP.
Oh, okay. That the Chattanooga Times
It's in the- it's
made
in
sure
the
they
Times.
put in there. Okay, let's see. What does it say? Did you read that article this morning?
I read part of the article this morning.
Terry says, let's see here. On Capitol Hill, Republicans urged the administration to get as much intelligence out of this guy as possible before anyone reads him his rights to remain silent. Supplies him with a lawyer and prepares him for a trial in the U.S. courtroom.
All right, on October 18th, 2012, New York Times reporter David Kirkpatrick spent 2 leisurely hours, that's a quote from the reporter, with Katala at, quote, a crowded luxury hotel sipping a strawberry frappe on the patio and scoffing at the threats coming from the American and Libyan governments. Then in August of this year, CNN's Arwa Damon spent 2 hours with him at a well-known hotel coffee shop in Benghazi. I'm sorry, Franklin, are they lying? Is CNN and the New York Times lying?
What was the date on that, John?
Well, October 18th, 2012.
Okay.
Are you going to argue with the New York Times? You just told me it didn't happen. You just said it didn't happen. Here's the New York Times giving you the date and the place.
Okay.
Here's CNN telling you in August of this year, they sat down with him.
Okay.
Franklin, about a minute and a half ago, you said I was making it up and it didn't happen.
Okay, John.
Did it happen?
All right. Okay, apparently it did.
So why would you have said that?
Because I thought you had the wrong guy's name.
No, because you didn't want it to be true. You can't admit that your guy is a failure.
He's got him in custody. What do you mean he's a failure?
Got him in custody because the rest of his foreign policy is in shambles, and he finally said, I guess we better do something. And guess what? The special forces are always able to do something if they have a leader who lets them go.
Let me ask
Special
you.
forces did do this.
Let me ask you.
That's my point. He knew at any moment when he needed a trump card, he could call the special forces.
Why did he need a trump card?
Because his foreign policy is in shambles. But again, a person like yourself can't see that.
Why did he let these 5 terrorists go? He released 5 of the terrorists from where's that place they keep them at, John?
It used to be called Gitmo.
Oh yeah, Gitmo. Why would we release 5 terrorists there?
Exactly how long do you plan on keeping them?
Well,
Forever?
No, I'm just serious.
If
It's
you
an
really
honest
want an
question.
answer to that,
Forever?
why don't we just take the ones that are most dangerous?
I mean, we've never had a war before where we kept everybody forever.
well,
When
Franklin,
wars come to an end, we release prisoners.
you know
That's
who
what
the
happened.
I don't think we
Do you
ever
know who
declared
the-
a war, did we?
Do you know who the mastermind of the Benghazi attack was?
Well,
Now, the guy we caught is not the mastermind.
No,
he
I
was
don't
there.
know, John. I don't
Well,
know.
the mastermind is Abu Safian bin Kumu. Guess what? We had him in custody. And my President Bush, in a mistake, I think, to appease the left, released him from Gitmo in 2007. And now he's the mastermind of the attack in Benghazi.
And is that the reason that the president gave for releasing him?
I don't know why he gave it. I'm sure he gave Franklin, he gave it because the country had turned. All the liberal media had gotten
All the
everybody
liberal
down.
media.
Guess what, Franklin? We occupied Germany for 8 years before they could even hold a free election. There are costs, you're right, to being the world leader, but there are costs to not leading. And looking at the world going up in flames is the cost of not leading by your guys' example.
you think that there is a way for us to contain a religious civil war. And I don't agree with that assessment.
I think there's a way for us to contain bad
And that's
people.
what this is.
Here's what I suggest we
It's
do
a
right now.
religious civil war.
Here's what I
Well,
suggest.
guess what?
We do.
The Maliki, while we were in country, actually used his Shia militia to protect Sunni minorities. It wasn't.
No,
until,
he didn't, and
yes,
that's
he
the
did.
problem
No,
here.
you're wrong, Franklin.
No, that's
He
not
did.
true. That's
well,
not. It's
Franklin,
totally
I'll bring
false.
that into you next week as well. He sent his militias in, and he protected Sunni minorities. It wasn't until we pulled out that he started going, "Screw it, I'm going to let them go." And that's what actually inflamed the sectarian divisions.
In other words, this country governing itself caused the problem.
You're right, because one of the reasons we keep troops in a country after a war is not to be there to fight. One of them is to influence the government to make sure they manage things well. While we were there, he was actually trying to mend those fences. Now, maybe he was only doing it because we were there, but once again, that's the reason you leave a force there.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
You need money overnight? Check into cash. Your time is tight. .com. Bank account's too low? Check into cash. So where do you go? .com. Do it online in a record time. It's the easy way to get money next day. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. Just stay in the house, check into cash, and grab your mouse.com. Get your money online, check into cash, right on time.com. You can be sure it's secure from our bank straight to yours. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. No time to get away, check into cash. You gotta stay home.com. Hey, that's okay, check into cash. You can do it alone.com. Any old time, do it online. Just stay in the house and grab your mouse. Do a quick click from home. Get your money overnight at the right website. Do a quick click from home. Go to checkintocash.com.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic Surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions, also tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase. Rebel Drive-In Family Restaurant. The restaurant you grew up with here in Cleveland, Tennessee, located at 1010 South Lee Highway. Give them a call at 476-6373. They have a wonderful, huge breakfast, lunch, and dinner menu. It's the home of the famous Lotta Burger, and now a whole lot more. It's open every day except Monday. Yes, now even open on Sunday. Same menu, but new low prices. And don't forget, seniors, a discount on every Wednesday. Check out the home of the famous Lotta Burger and a whole lot more now at the Rebel Drive-In, 476-6373. Check out rebeldrivein.com. The Rebel Drive-In.
If you're looking for a home, apartment, or office space, Jones Properties provides residential and commercial properties in the heart of the Southeast that will fulfill any need. Plus, Jones Properties is one of the fastest growing firms in the area, which offers you more security. When you're ready for a home, apartment, or in need for commercial office space, it makes sense to call Jones Properties first at 472-4000. Plus, you can get additional information by logging on to the website at www.jonesproperties.biz. Jones Properties is also looking to invest in properties. So if you have a property that you need to sell, call the professional team at Jones Properties first. They'll help you find the perfect property for whatever your needs. Call today, 472-4000. And don't forget to keep up with Jones Properties on Facebook.
From checking to cash, they're coming to town. Mighty Clydesdales of world renown. Such a rare sight, all black and white. Big excitement all around.
Check Into Cash, your one-stop money shop, introduces the Cashdales, our beautiful Clydesdale horses now touring the United States, representing our company heritage, appearing in parades, events, and visiting Check Into Cash locations.
2,000 pounds marching around, every hoofbeat shaking the ground. Tall as the sky, 18 hands high, they're gentle giants, so don't be shy.
Check Into Cash, now celebrating 20 years, is proud to present the beautiful Clydesdale horses. Visit cashdales.com for the upcoming schedule and more information.
Check Into Cash, they're on their way. The mighty Clydesdales will make your day.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back. I want to play something for John. I found this, and I just thought he'd really appreciate it. Frankly, I know you will, too.
And joining me now is the man who crunched these numbers, James Allen Fox, professor of criminology at Northeastern University. I have to say, it's hard to believe when it seems like every week we're reporting another mass shooting, many of them at schools, that this isn't an increasing trend, but that's what your data shows. I have to ask, though, your figures only go to 2012. Could there have been a spike in the last 2 years?
Sure, there could be.
We're talking about
spike
shootings.
in the early 2000s. There was a spike in late 1990s. There was a spike around 2005. And usually spikes are followed by troughs. So we shouldn't jump to conclusions. You know, Barack Obama has called gun violence the new normal. I should remind you, however, that Bill Clinton once said we should focus on trend lines, not headlines. And the trend line here is flat, even while the population of this country has grown.
I love that comment, trend lines, not headlines, by Mr. Clinton. Well, that kind of sums up what you've been saying, John.
Well, I mean, look,
gun violence
nobody
is
is putting down the gun violence that happens. We're not talking about that. But the there are people on the left that fundamentally don't like the idea of regular everyday citizens owning guns. And so every time one of these events happen, just 2 weeks ago, one of the main events, there was a huge discussion of gun control after the shootings. Guess what? The only bad part was 3 of the 6 victims he knifed to death. He stabbed them with a knife. Now, nobody made that distinction, and no one said, oh, we need knife control. I mean, if that incident called up the need for gun control, shouldn't it have also called up the need for knife control?
Oh, well.
We had a machete attack down in northern Alabama just this past week. Guy was attacked with a machete. In China, the bulk of the mass murders, and they have a lot of mass murders in China, are with swords and with knives. The worst of it is Bloomberg's top guy, who was with the, mayors against illegal guns, and now I think they call themselves Every Town for Gun Safety, because they found out too many of their mayors were actually violating the gun laws, and so they had to change their name. This guy has stepped down, but in stepping down, he gave an interview with the Wall Street Journal, and he said, because people perceive a mismatch in the policy solutions we have to offer and the way some of these mass shootings happened, it's a messaging problem for us. I think it's a messaging problem when a mass shooting happens and nothing we have to offer would have stopped that mass shooting. Sure, it's a challenge in this issue. He admits that none of the proposals that they put forward would have stopped any of these mass shootings. Now, here's the real, Franklin can probably, I hope, agree to this. The real problem with these mass shootings is when you get sidetracked onto gun control, you're missing the real discussion. Why are we creating more mentally disturbed individuals who want to mass murder?
That's what's amazing, is how many copycat shootings there are.
Well, I will say I read a lot of essays on this, and at least on the conservative side that I'm reading, most of these guys now, they will tell you at the front of the essay, I am not going to mention this person's name. I'm not going to say anything about them.
Sure.
And I think that's a healthy reaction on our part.
It's a different world, following up on that point. There have always been disturbed individuals in our society, but now they have a way of glorifying themselves and seeing that there are other people like them in the society through the internet and mass media and cable news and whatever. And I think that there's a legitimate argument that provides encouragement to such individuals who are prone to this kind of mental illness.
I mean, think about how disturbed this is. 2 of these murders in the last couple of weeks were to impress a fictional, internet cartoon character. Mm-hmm. I mean, how screwed up as an individual do you have to be that you want to impress a make-believe cartoon character?
All right, that's enough comment. Let's just talk about Lois Lerner, the IRS. What's going to happen with her? Where do we go next with this?
Well, right now she's sitting in her multi-million-dollar mansion on the Potomac River.
Well, now they're saying that they lost 2 years?
About 2 years.
2 years worth of emails.
But only the emails that were going out to the White House, to the Justice Department, and to Democratic lawmakers.
No, that last part's not accurate.
Well, all of the emails going to those groups have been lost.
Let's just say this.
That's not
Franklin,
accurate.
let me say.
Yeah.
Do you think you use computers in your office? Sure. If something happened, do you think you could recapture that?
Well, let me say there's a really long article this morning about this problem, and it is a problem. And you say I say nothing critical about this administration. I'll say something critical about them.
Okay.
But there's a long-term problem in the IRS right there. And here's the thing: they have an antiquated computer system that does this interesting thing. They have a tape backup system that archives emails for 6 months. And at the end of 6 months, it dumps them and recycles them.
But Franklin,
so, no, hold on.
All right.
So they have a instruction that they're supposed to print off hard copies of all of their emails.
Was there a fire?
Hold on, John. Let me finish. Okay. And it's a horrible system.
Did
and
they
it
print
should
them
not
off?
and it should be fixed.
But
and
did
it should
they
not be
print them
I have
off?
no idea.
Do they have printers?
I don't know if they printed them off.
Did they have a fire in the file room?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of these emails have been produced.
Are you telling me that you don't think this is quite coincidental?
In other words, you
By the
believe
way,
I don't have an opinion on
Well,
whether
let
it's
me give you- let me
coincidental
ask you
or
a-
what
not.
he's trying to say. What he's really trying
No,
to say.
no, what I'm saying
Do
to
you
you is-
believe that they
You
are lying
believe
or
it.
not about this?
Do I believe that they're lying?
This is a cover-up or
That
not?
this is another cover-up.
At this point, I have no opinion.
Well, let me
about
ask you a
that.
question and to give an opinion on this.
Yeah.
The IRS found out that if we believe the emails are destroyed, now all kinds of computer experts say this is BS, that they're not lost, they're not destroyed, and on top of the fact that they're violating federal law to have not had a hard copy. So no one's explained why they can't produce the hard copy, that they're required by. Matter of fact, they actually require it of us to produce a hard copy. But here's something you can explain to me. If you accept that they actually lost them, they found out in February 2014 that they couldn't produce these, that it had been lost in a crash. That was 3 months prior to newly installed Commissioner John Koskinen telling the committee that the IRS would produce all of her emails. Now, he knew 3 months earlier that, according to their excuse, they couldn't produce them, and yet he went to Congress and said, we will produce them. Why did he do that?
You lost me with your
All right.
timeline there.
Well,
If you accept,
No.
if you
when was
accept-
he installed was the question that I had. You said 3 months beforehand and then
No.
newly
What
installed.
I'm saying, he's newly installed. He took over.
When
this
did he
past
take
fall.
over? That's
I believe
my
in the
question.
fall.
Okay.
This was after he took over.
Okay,
but
that's
it
my
was
question.
3 months before he testified before Congress that he would deliver all of them. If he knew in February that he couldn't deliver all of them by their excuse, if we accept their excuse, why did he 3 months later, I believe in May, testify that they would turn all of them over? Why didn't he tell Congress then?
I don't know. Well, he'll have to
Because
answer
it's a
that
cover-up,
question.
and he can't get his story straight.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at a veteran IT professional give 6 reasons why the IRS claim that has lost 2 years of Lois Lerner's
Oh, no, wait a
email
minute.
is
Don't
simply
say-
not feasible.
But don't say Lois Lerner. Now we found out, Friday it was Lois Lerner. Today it's 6 other high-ranking officials, including the assistant to the director who made 54 visits to the White House during this time.
It was probably
First-
anybody that got email from Lois Lerner.
First of all, a lot of these emails have been produced because they've been able to get them from the other side of the chain. Because those are also government offices that we're talking about.
Right.
So there's a real probability that all these emails can be recovered anyway.
That's what Republicans are saying, but they've been asking for them for over a year.
How long does it take to find something?
Well, according to the stories that I've read, they've tasked over 100 people who are working on nothing but this.
But Franklin, that's more BS to go, look what we're doing. They've produced all kinds of records, none of which the committee actually cared about. The most specific records, none of those records have been produced. One of them is a Mrs. Flax, Nicole Flax. She was a frequent visitor to the White House and the Eisenhower Executive Office building during this time of the targeting of conservative groups. And yet her emails are lost as well as 5 other high-ranking officials' emails. All of the people that probably would have been involved in a illegal conspiracy to target individual American groups, all of their emails are lost.
Well, there's something here that's weird, because even if the IRS is telling the truth about the computer crash, its own employee procedures indicate that Lerner should have the paper copies of her emails.
That is
on
correct,
file.
and I'm not excusing that. If she's supposed to do that, she's supposed to do it, and she should be held responsible for it.
Well, let me read it to you.
I mean, no doubt.
Well, what do
But
we,
that is in fact the rule, as I understand it.
What do we do with her next?
Well, there's a chance that she'll get prosecuted.
Well,
over
not
that.
without any evidence.
Well, she may be prosecuted for violating those rules if that's a law.
Here's the law. I'll just read it to you. The Treasury Department. The Treasury Department's current email policy requires emails and attachments that meet the definition of a federal record to be added to the organization's files by printing them, including the essential transmission data, and filing them with related paper records. If transmission and receipt data are not printed by the email system, annotate the paper copy. Please note that maintaining a copy of an email or its attachments within the IRS email MS Outlook application does not meet the requirements of maintaining an official record, the IRS stated. Therefore, print and file email and its attachments if they are either permanent records or if they relate to a specific case. So, Franklin, before they come out in public and say we can't produce the emails because we had a computer crash, why didn't they just go get the paper copies?
Well, that's a good question, John. That's a fair question.
The White House has already defended this and said you've heard of computer crashes.
Who are we waiting on to give us that answer? Who are we waiting on to give us that answer?
Well, first of all, I don't know if they were printed out or not. Okay, they were supposed to be.
Well, how soon can we? I mean,
I don't know the answer to that
then
question.
let me ask a simpler question. You're not willing to say this is a conspiracy based on the lost emails.
Not at this point.
What if they come forward and say, you know what, we forgot to copy them too? Does that start to be a little bit of a stretch?
Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Franklin, let me ask you a question. If our government targets American citizens, what recourse do we have? When our own government is targeting us
John,
and
if
lying
there's
to us,
evidence
what
that
recourse?
that has happened, then I'm all for prosecuting.
What was one of the I believe it was the first article of impeachment for Richard Nixon?
I don't remember what
it was
the first one was.
I don't know if it was first. It was one of the main ones. It was the use of the IRS to target political enemies. We impeached a president over this very issue.
Well, I guess we're just going to keep living the legend of Lois Lerner and the IRS.
Well, it's just another. Another area where this guy's failed.
Can somebody say, listen? Could Mr. Obama say, listen? I want to see those today.
I'm sure he could.
Would that
guess what? They'd
simplify
be
things a little
emails.
bit?
They would be emails going into his White House, though.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, could he
wait
request?
Wait, let's back up.
There's
just a little
hard
bit.
copies. There's
Let's
supposed to
just
be
back
hard
up a little
copies.
bit.
Could he request?
First of all, it's my understanding that they have produced approximately 65,000 emails involving Lois Lerner from or to her that they've obtained. Okay,
but the 2 years that
but none during the time the targeting was going on, and none between her and the Justice Department, her and the White House.
No, that's not accurate, John. Many of these emails have been recovered through the recipient's emails. In other words, if you sent an email, it went to somebody.
Actually, they were
So you get
only
them from
recovered after Judicial Watch went to court and a federal judge ordered it.
What I'm saying to you is all of these emails have not been lost. They may not be recoverable
Franklin,
from her computer, but
right.
you get them from the other side of the chain.
Let me ask you a question. If you were prosecuting, not defending, if you were prosecuting a murder victim or a murderer, would you allow the murderer to compile the evidence?
I don't understand.
Would you allow, if you were a prosecutor and you're prosecuting Joe for murder, would you put Joe in charge of putting all the evidence together?
Are we talking about prosecuting Lois Lerner?
I'm talking about the IRS. This whole thing is about the IRS being used as a tool by some of the people at the top. We need a special prosecutor. We need someone who doesn't have a hand in the game.
Okay, that's.
Well, you might want to tell your president
that in and of itself is not unreasonable.
To it.
How long should we wait on this information about Lois Lerner and the IRS? How long? I mean.
Well, how long?
We've been waiting 2 years now.
So
some of these groups still haven't received their tax exempt status. And we know now that she illegally released personal IRS data to the FBI. So once again, our government is being weaponized
IRS
against
data to the
Yes, she
FBI.
sent IRS data on these groups, the confidential data that they send to the IRS. She sent their files to the FBI. That's actually a complete violation of the law. And once again, it is the weaponization of government against American citizens.
She's guilty.
Well, the problem is not her. She's just the linchpin right now. The problem is a lot of people think this actually came out of the White House, was directed by the White House. And that's what these emails probably would show. And amazingly, that's why these emails specifically have been lost.
What is the, when you take the fifth, what is that supposed to do?
The Constitution says the government cannot compel an individual to provide evidence to be used against yourself.
So, if she took the fifth when she was testifying to our own local government about this, and she took the fifth.
Her constitutional right.
All right, that's her constitutional right.
Sure.
To make sure she's not drawn in.
No,
as a guilty party.
she just doesn't have to help somebody prosecute her.
You can't beat her and make her confess.
You can't make somebody. If I'm the government and I want to prosecute you, I can't make you help me do that.
Well, let me ask you a question more philosophical.
So why would she do that? Does she think she's guilty of something, you think?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. I certainly, as a lawyer, have never felt that people taking the fifth is always a sign of guilt. It's not.
Well, Franklin, if she was running the IRS and therefore she somewhat represents the IRS, does the IRS not also have a conflict of interest in allowing them to decide what evidence to produce and what evidence not to produce?
Well, I'm not aware of them deciding what evidence to produce
They just
and
did
not
by
produce.
claiming that 2 years of the most pertinent evidence is gone.
Let's take a phone call here. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Just I'd like to welcome back Franklin. He's a good guy. And,
Good to be back.
And I hope you enjoyed your trip. While you've been gone, Frank, I don't know if you're on top of this or not, but I know Steve and John is, they actually sent 101 dogs to put them in Charleston mini storage. My question is, where the 101 dogs come from? And I don't know what's going to come out of that, but I don't know. I'm just trying to get off this topic you guys are on today because it's got me kind of down a little bit.
I got you. Okay. I got you.
Yeah, but anyway, I want to listen to you guys. I don't know what we're going to do about this, but
just 101 Dalmatians or something? What is it?
I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. But they actually sent them to Charleston, and they put them in a little mini storage, I think, there. And I don't know if old Mr. Keith Beatty's in charge of that or not up there. But anyway, I'm going to listen to you guys. I enjoy you.
Thank you.
All right, see you.
Appreciate it.
All right, Lois learned if she's probably guilty, but let's move on real quick.
Remind me not to put you on any of my juries.
Don't worry.
That's how you get out of jury duty. Yeah, I think she's guilty.
I don't think you're going to be serving on any right now.
That's right. Here's the next headline I've got here. Obama ink pen, his famous ink pen, enslaves a new generation of Americans to the government. And he's talking about student loans, where he signed this thing where basically the student loan payback will be 10% of your earnings in the future, and that it will extend to 20 years and then basically be written off.
Yeah, but the problem is you can't make a loan like that.
Oh,
I mean, maybe the government can.
Well, wait a minute. There's another catch that came in there that really wasn't talked about a whole lot. If you work for the federal government, your student loan will be written off in 10 years.
But here, when you say written off, who pays for it?
I don't know, John.
You borrowed $100,000. If the institution doesn't get $100,000 back plus interest, they'll quit making loans. The only people that can do that is a government that's printing $85 billion a month in the basement of the Treasury. This is, Franklin, I'm not trying to be ugly. That is financial idiocy. It can't work. Now, it may work at the ballot box. You may get some votes out of it, but it will destroy the banking industry, or it'll destroy our debt.
Well, it's my understanding that what's happened is there's so much federal money that's out there for the
federal
schools,
money has ballooned the size and cost of education.
That's
this
right.
is one of the conservative tenets that we argue with liberals. When you dump a bunch of money into something, it gets spent, but it doesn't necessarily improve the situation. These schools have been flooded with federal money over the last 20 or 30 years, and they have grown, and their overhead is huge.
It's actually a bigger problem that we've had a rise in the number of institutions whose students qualify for student loans.
That's a problem with liberal policies, Franklin. That's our point.
I don't know that that's
Let me give
reflective
you a local
of any
example.
Democratic policy.
It is, Franklin. You what happens is you put a policy in place. We saw it in Georgia with the lottery. They put a policy in place, and then they said, oh, we can buy some more votes if we lower the GPA standard. Well, they lower the GPA standard to get the votes to make people happy, which is what happens with a government program. And then, on average, most lotteries in the United States in 7 years are going broke, because they've lowered their standards. They're paying too much money out, not bringing enough money in. That's what happens when you do these giveaways. I'll give you a little local sort of tie-in. I was told the county education, since 2007, there's been 51 or 52 new positions added with a 0 increase in enrollment. Now think about that, 52 new positions. Now, if they're teaching positions, I think we could talk about that. But if they're staff of development, or if they're this director or that director or this coordinator, 52 new employees, and we've had no increase in the enrollment?
Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
I got a question for John.
All right.
And Franklin also. How much money, you're talking about lotteries, how much money has been put into the Bradley County school system from the Tennessee lottery in the last 2 years?
I don't have a specific amount, but it's a substantial amount of money.
Well, I don't know. Originally no money was going there. It was going in the scholarships, and then the legislature revisited that. And the caller makes a really good point. These are the kind of questions that the public should be able to ask and immediately get an answer. I will tell you, I've tried to get information out of city school system, county school system, the state. You can't get a straight answer on any of this stuff. They count on it being difficult and complicated.
Well, the thing about it is the advertisement for the intake for the Tennessee lottery is that, oh yeah, we've put such and such amount of money into the school systems. Well, it's just like the Lois Lerner deal and the email deal. If they put that money in there, somebody has got a record of it. And why can't these records be obtained by our county government, our city government, or people that are interested in knowing where this money goes and who's getting fat pockets off of it?
Well, I think the government can obtain it. It's you and I that can't seem to obtain it.
Well, John, I know that you're in the process of running for a political position here. Looks to me like somebody of your status could obtain records like that.
Well, my job I'm running for is just a political party job, but the problem is nobody can get that outside of the bureaucracies, and that's an argument against big bureaucracies from the get-go.
Well, the thing about it is those people that are in charge of receiving that money for Bradley County, Hamilton County, Meigs County, whoever, from the state legislature in Nashville, somebody has got a record of that, and it ought to be made public by the government of the state of Tennessee where and how much money where that money goes.
Now, I think you can go to the lottery deal, and they'll tell you how much they put into the
what he
education
wants to know is how much specifically has Bradley County gotten, how much has Cleveland City gotten. He wants to know, because they're all the time coming back and going, oh, we don't have enough money. Well, sometimes if you actually look at the revenue stream, for example, they'll argue the county commission cut our budget. It's against state law to cut their budget. Now they may cut the rate of growth.
Are we going to have another lawsuit against the lottery like the liquor tax law that all the schools are suing?
We'd just like to know how much money they actually have gotten.
Though, the thing about it is people that are responsible for this, they need to be held accountable for that.
Well, write your Republican governor and ask him.
Whether you be a Democrat or a Republican, Franklin, somebody needs to be held responsible for that.
Well, that's what we keep trying to tell Franklin here all the time. Somebody needs to be held responsible.
Well, I don't see why Franklin don't get up and go back to his law practice and get out from under the axe of you and John Stansbury, because y'all try to chop his head off.
No, we're trying to be nice. We're trying to be nice. Franklin's a great guy.
I know he is.
Franklin's like that creature in Men in Black. You chop that head off and another one just sprouts back out.
That's right.
I sure would like for you to work on that, John, and give us some answer.
All right.
You and Franklin work on that and give us an answer to that question that I asked in the next week or two.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
All right. We're running way past time, and, as usual, we've got to go until next week. But one thing I want to make a key prediction right now. The Benghazi breakthrough, the key leader that's been captured, who's being brought back to the United States of America.
But not to Gitmo where he could be interrogated.
That's right. But they're going to bring him back here. This is going to be in the news until after the next election with a bunch of crap that doesn't mean anything. And I love the new trend line, not headline, that Mr. Clinton was talking about. I love that. Trend lines, not headlines. Bye-bye. See you next week.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30.